Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Season 3 of Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, we're covering South Carolina's stellar week in college hoops.
And later, we'll be talking about the NFL's upcoming conference championships.
Be sure to stick around for our first week of head-to-head college basketball pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry.
This is the one where there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer.
I'm always the get-back game guy.
There's so many teams with so many good wins.
Because, they love seeing Clemson lose no matter what.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
Yeah,
Return of the King released 20 years ago today. There you go. And for that reason, give me the Noles.
I like being right more than I like being happy.
I think the committee made the right choice.
Florida State did not lose a football game. It's football. This is college football. How can you not be romantic about baseball? It's just such a tremendous sport.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
South Carolina's men's basketball team has been red hot to start the season, upsetting the number 6 Kentucky Wildcats in Colonial Life Arena on Tuesday. JP, what an absolute thriller. You were in the stands, weren't you, pal?
Oh, I was. This picture courtesy of yours truly. But you know what I always say? You can't walk into Colonial Life Arena on a Tuesday night in January and live to tell about it. It was just a tremendous game from every single member of the Gamecocks. 20 assists on the 29 made field goals for South Carolina, and just a amazing 79-62 victory that really kind of propelled South Carolina off the bubble and really into just, now we're playing for seeding in the tournament. It's no longer a game of survival. As you can see, the man from Roebuck, South Carolina, Talon Cooper, 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 8 of 11 from the field, and almost more important than anything else, no turnovers.
He's such a good passer, but finds a way to do it all without turning over the ball. Such an important part of this team, and I feel like he's had a really consistent season so far, so it's hard to call this a breakout game, but it's definitely his top performance of the season, just elevating his teammates and scoring the ball at his best mark of the season with his 28 being his season high. Meechie Johnson, of course, kind of the premier scorer of this team, had 14 points on 5 of 11 from the field, but the rest of the team just as a unit shot 48% from the field and 46% from 3. It was just a really good team effort. And it seemed like they couldn't miss there for a while.
Absolutely not. And, especially who couldn't miss was Jacoby Wright, who came off the bench. And, the onus was really on him. Miles Studi out for a couple weeks with an injury after the Georgia game. And you're really just trying to find some scoring to replace that, especially from beyond the arc, which we know Studi's great at. And, man, Wright seemed to have a timely bucket every time Kentucky would score and get back into it a little bit. He'd be right there. And, you mentioned Kentucky played pretty awfully on offense. South Carolina's defense forced them into a lot of bad shots, a lot of shots in the mid-range, but Kentucky's defense was terrible. And it's been bad this whole year. They're, towards the, they're almost nearing in the triple-digit marks on KenPom. Their switching was bad. They didn't fight through screens well. They just left a lot of guys open. They were not very attentive on the low post either, especially on baseline out of bounds play. South Carolina was able to get a lot of good looks immediately out of that. And so it really just came down to South Carolina came into this game, everything, they firing on all cylinders, just everything could have gone right, went right. Even though BJ Mack didn't play that well offensively, he was great defensively. Josh Gray, the senior, coming off the bench, just absolutely destroying Kentucky's bigs down there. The rebounding was super impressive. The freshman, Colin Murray Boyles, man. He missed the start of the season due to an interesting illness, and he was, amazing. 3 blocks, 2 steals, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He did it all.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing for this Gamecock team. It feels like a unit. It feels like it's not dependent on one person at all. And I heard one of the announcers, I think they described Kentucky perfectly, that the offense has a national championship level ceiling. But the defense right now looks about like around a 32 ceiling. They do not look good at all on defense. South Carolina had whatever they want, and there were so many easy buckets where Kentucky just seemed to have kind of missed the mark on their assignments, a lot of layups, a lot of wide open assignments. Just not a good all-around game from the Wildcats, but there is some bright spots. Rob Dillingham, 16 points, their leading scorer, the freshman coming off the bench, he's incredible. He's having a fantastic year.
Yeah, he would be starting for pretty much almost every team in the SEC, except maybe our Gamecocks with the backcourt we have. But outside of him, he was a very efficient 7 for 14. The Wildcats just were not efficient at all. Only 3 of them in double figures. They shot 30% from 3 in the entire game. 8 turnovers to 7 assists. It was just a poor showing offensively because South Carolina's defense played so well. And when we get into tournament time, if Kentucky runs into a mid-major that can play solid defense and has some shooters, it could get real very quickly for Calipari. And Big Z, the guy who they were fawning over the national media, just couldn't get enough of him after he got cleared to play and came off the bench, I think against Mizzou or
It was Georgia,
State.
I think.
Georgia,
Yeah.
and dominated. Was completely neutralized by Josh Gray and Colin Murray Boyles, which is really impressive.
And he had a huge height advantage over. He's 7'2".
Yeah,
he's
Josh
taller
Gray,
than all of our
7
big
foot,
men.
looked like a kid next to him. But Gray was able to back him down, turn around, poster dunk, and that really set the tone, I think, for the rest of the game. But not just in men's basketball, the Lady Gamecocks have also been crushing it on the court. They bested LSU with a score of 76-70 last night to maintain a perfect record and looking to stay atop the polls. Man, it was just a great revenge game, I think.
I think it was just an excellent game. It was super fun to watch from start to finish. The Gamecocks, of course, moved to 18-0. But the thing this season that feels just super prevalent is the balanced scoring attack. They had five scores in double figures. They have 5 scores, the average double figures on the season. They were led by Chloe Kitts last night with 14 points, 6 of 9 from the field. And it felt like she kind of carried them early on in the game. When they were struggling, they ended up trailing by 11 points. That's their second largest deficit of the year. But they came back. They kind of took the blows in the first half. And in the second half, found some really clutch baskets from Bree Hall, 2 clutch threes late in the game. That was enough to sink the Tigers.
Yeah, and the ability of spot-up jump shooting on this team compared to last year is just impeccable. Last year's team, outstanding. Probably in terms of overall quality, the best team in women's college basketball. But this team is, I think they're just more dynamic offensively, and it showed. Teams that were built like South Carolina's team last year, they struggled to come back trailing by double digits on the road against really good teams in an environment. That was one of the best environments I've seen at a women's college basketball game.
Ever.
I mean, it was outstanding. A great presentation by ESPN. Women's college basketball is really just on the up and up now. But, we mentioned the shooting, but South Carolina's ability to drive inside still and play through the post caused them to be able to foul out Angel Reese, who just couldn't really make a huge impact on the game. She was good at getting her teammates involved, but when it came down to it, just 15 points, and she was out of the game.
She had a better game than she did last year in Columbia.
Yeah,
she had a horrible game last year in Columbia. This year she looked a little bit better, but still fouling out with 4 minutes to go, making them put in a backup big, that's tough. And
South Carolina was able to toy with her, especially in the pick and roll.
Absolutely. As Camila Cardoso just stands much taller than Angel Reese does. And again, it was the guards' tough finishing ability. I saw countless times Raven Johnson taking contact and still making the layup. I mean, it's a very physical brand of basketball, but I think this year they have the shooting element that was not there last year.
They've added the finesse. They've kept the same level of tenacity and physicality. They've kept the intensity on the defensive end. They've just added another dynamic that makes them, even with Caitlin Clark out there scoring 1 million points on 4,000% usage, I think it makes them the single most dangerous team in women's college basketball, and it shows, undefeated, number 1 in the country. Iowa can't say that. They lost to Ohio State last weekend, so
it's not their only loss of the season either. I don't believe.
Yeah.
But the Gamecocks' ability also to kind of calm down in that environment was something that I think shows just how good this team is and kind of how mature they are already, even without a ton of senior leadership on this team, with a lot of it graduating out last year. But that environment, as you mentioned, very rattling. But Dawn Staley's ability to calm the team down, they settled in. And then the second half, completing the comeback. It's big time.
I think it's fair to say she outcoached Kim Mulkey. Contrary to popular belief that is something that can happen.
It sure looked like it down the stretch. There were a couple good timeouts used by Dawn Staley. And, it was Kim Mulkey's squad that fell apart, I would say, JP, but, we'll digress on that.
The lights were brighter than expected for the Bio Bengals.
It sure looked like it, but They're not the only basketball team in the state we're going to talk about. As further north in the Palmetto State, the Clemson Tigers prepare to face 12th-ranked Duke on Saturday. And this Clemson men's team, they've had, lost 4 or 5 recently, but still really good on the season.
Yeah, they started out the year hot, 11-1, top 10 in the country, I believe, or as high as 12th in the AP poll. They were seemingly the favorites in the ACC. But then, you hit conference play. It is hard to win in college basketball and conference play, especially on the road. They go on the road to NC State, they go on the road to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, a very dangerous team, especially when they can get open looks from 3. They're a team, I think, that if they make the dance, could really make some noise. But I digress. This is a Clemson team that, they've kind of weathered the storm. They had a very tough start to conference play. Of course, they have a tough matchup this weekend here against Duke on the road in Durham. The all-time season series is 114 to 33 in favor of the Blue Devils. But
pretty evenly matched there,
the streak is a 1-game win streak by Clemson. They were able to get a victory in Little John last year when they were in first place in the ACC. So it's kind of an opposite deal from last year's Clemson team, where they started out a little slow, got hot in conference play. Now they started out hot, and they're trying to get back a little bit, but they still have great metrics. As you can see there, 32nd in the net rating, 36th in KenPom, and 32nd in Bartorvik, which are incredibly important predictive ratings that the committee uses in March. Last year Clemson had the great record, but they didn't have the ratings to really back it up. Now that their record is suffering a little bit, but the computers really like them. So we'll see if they can get a big win here against Duke, who the ratings like as well, not just predictive ratings, but the polls, number 12 in the country. Especially they stayed that high after they lost to a Pitt team that was dead last in the ACC. Blake Hinson had a great game there. The picture of him up in front of the Cameron Crazies, they're all flipping him off. But the big matchup, I think, is going to be Kyle Filipowski versus P.J. Hall. This might be the best player-on-player matchup down in the low post we'll see all season.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. I mean, both players almost putting up 20. Filipowski with 18.2, P.J. Hall with 19.7. Just a battle of the big men, and that's so fun to watch. We see it all the time, and there's so many different levels of basketball, but these two guys are 2 of the best in the entire country. Filipowski, 18-9 on the season, but he can stretch the floor 40% from 3, but so can P.J. Hall. He's shooting 52% from the field. He averages 19 and 7. But I think a lot of the guard play and the shooting ability surrounding those big men are going to be key to this game, as Jeremy Roach and Tyrese Proctor are going to have to step up for Duke. I think if they're going to be able to match the shooting ability of Joe Girard from Clemson, and I think the 3-ball is always dependent in Duke games. I feel like that's how they like to play that game. Growing up a UNC fan, I've seen us give up about 25 threes to Duke on, countless times. So I know that they like to space out the floor, work it inside out, and I think that's going to be the case. Yeah,
Clemson's defense, it's going to be hard-pressed. They got Jack Clark back from injury, the NC State transfer, who's a really great piece on the defensive end. R.J. Godfrey is going to be really important for them, I think, being able to switch 1 through 5. But Clemson in conference play, in their losses, they haven't been able to hit the threes. They're still one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country because they were that good in the non-conference. And in their wins against Boston College and Florida State, they've looked really good from beyond the arc. But it's going to be whether or not Joe Girard can really step up, because they're going to focus on P.J. Hall. So they're going to be look for Joe Girard, who has had some really high highs, some really low lows this year for the Tigers. But also, maybe they can get Alex Hemingway back, the sniper from Indiana, who's been injured on and off basically his entire career for Clemson. And then, someone like Chase Hunter. Chase Hunter has really stepped up his play, I think, in the ACC. He's really picked up the slack in some of those games where P.J. Hall and Joe Girard have struggled. So if they can get everyone firing on all cylinders again, this can be one of the best teams in the country, one of the best offenses. The defensive end has struggled a little bit, but the offense, even with some of their struggles from shooting beyond the arc, they're still one of the best in terms of ratings and stats.
Absolutely, and I think we'd be remiss not to mention the rebounding battles that are going to have to happen on the inside. As Ian Shefflin, he's one of those players we saw in the South Carolina game, just everywhere. It seems like every single play, every time the announcer's calling his name because he's doing something on the court. And it's not the same thing. He averages 9.8 points, 9.6 boards, but definition of a glue guy.
Yeah.
Guy does everything. It's a sports fan's dream. I mean, having a guy like that on your team. And for Clemson, in these big games, I feel like it's going to be him throwing himself after loose balls,
getting
boxing out on the
possessions.
inside, offensive rebounding. That's going to be key to their success, and it's going to be key for Duke to neutralize him, his impact, which is hard to do because he's just everywhere.
Absolutely, and they're going to lean on the fact Duke's defense isn't that great according to the efficiency metrics. But what they are pretty good at is limiting offensive rebounds. They're 17th in opponent offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, Ian Shefflin, top 20 in both offensive and defensive rebounding percentage. So that's going to be huge there. But this is going to be a great game. We're going to take a quick break. And while college football is over, we're going to be talking about some National Football League action. We got some football updates leading up to this year's Super Bowl to get to after the break.
And unfortunately, JP, we're all done talking about college football as the season has come to an end, but we've still got some gridiron action for you on Ball Don't Lie. NFL Conference Championship games start this Sunday with an AFC shootout between the Chiefs and Ravens, kicking off at 3 p.m. in Baltimore. And this one's bound to be good as two of the premier quarterbacks in the NFL face off once again, and the Ravens have looked dominant all year long, haven't they, JP?
Absolutely, and it's really going to be a battle between Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't get much better than this, but not to take the stage from those two quarterbacks. These are two of the best defenses in the NFL.
Absolutely.
This is the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has had in Kansas City, and Steve Spagnuolo, the mastermind between Super Bowl winning defenses for the New York Giants, has been nails here. I mean, they have produced one of the best scoring defenses in the NFL. The per drive stats look great. They're just really great at limiting the explosive plays, which is something Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens are going to like to do, and they're going to have a weapon back in the form of tight end Mark Andrews, who right before we went on air today got activated.
Breaking
back.
news. You see the ticker.
We'll have Mark Andrews versus Travis Kelce, a great tight end matchup. As fun as the Buffalo Bills are, as much as I like Josh Allen, this is the heavyweight title match of the century in the AFC, I feel like.
Absolutely, and it feels like before the playoffs, it felt like everyone was writing the Chiefs off, and I was like, you never want to write off Patrick Mahomes. It's not a guy you want to bet against. And this has been their weakest team in terms of offensive weapens. They've lost Tyreek. The receivers have had some notable drops.
I think they quite literally have stone hands.
They've produced some laugh track moments this year, if you will. But they still just find a way to get it done. It's remarkable that year in and year out, no matter what the teams look like, the Chiefs and going to the AFC Championship game almost are a guarantee.
Yeah,
and wouldn't you know it, here they are.
I saw a funny stat where they're really kind of almost exactly like the Houston Astros in the MLB. Mm-hmm. Both teams have made it at least to the American League Championship Series or the AFC Championship 6 straight times. They both have 2 total championships in that window. One of them was against the Philadelphia team. Sorry to our producer, Tyler. But there hasn't been a huge cheating scandal with the Chiefs. They're a lot more likable in that regard.
They're a little more likable.
They're more likable than the biggest.
They're respectable because they don't cheat, as far as we know. But
and they've been a fun team. Ever since Andy Reid took over in 2013, they've been winning football games. They haven't missed the playoffs.
Sure,
I think under Reid, they went from Alex Smith and Jamal Charles, that dynamic offense there, to potentially one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and a great defense. It's really kind of pretty just amazing to watch. But man, we just need to talk about Lamar Jackson. The man from the Ville has had one of the
most electrifying players in the NFL. He's unstoppable.
I just had to get this ready. He had 4 total touchdowns and 250 total yards against the Houston Texans. They didn't really need him to do all that much. But the run game this year, he's their leading rusher. He's their leading rushing scorer. Of course, he's the leading passer. He's the starting quarterback. He can just do things through the air and on the ground that very few people can do, even running backs and even quarterbacks. And, Baltimore's pulling out all the stops. I had to get this list up just so I could get everyone. They are putting everything into this game to make it the most raucous environment possible. They got Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Anquan Bolden, Terrell Suggs, Jonathan Ogden in terms of former players making appearances, either being honored or just being a part of the environment, just getting people fired up.
You'd think it stops there.
No.
We're not finished. This is Baltimore.
Perhaps the most accomplished athlete in the history of sports, Michael Phelps, is going to be delivering the game ball to the midfield coin toss. T-Pain will be performing at halftime. And before we even get it all started, a B-2 stealth bomber is going to fly over the stadium. I mean, this is the pomp and circumstance that you get.
It's the coolest thing ever.
For a game like this. This is a cultural moment, I think, in American sports history.
JP, they don't do that for the Super Bowl.
No, this is
sick.
the Baltimore Ravens. You know, maybe our good friend Stav will
We
be
might
there
see
too.
old Stavros Halkias there. Ronnie Raven, the purple camo is going to be in abundance at M&T Bank Stadium.
Maybe they'll bring out Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, elite quarterback. But, you know, it's not just the AFC that has this massive matchup.
Sure isn't.
A historic showdown in the NFC between the upstart underdog, no one thought they'd be here, Detroit Lions, and the ultimate powerhouse, the San Francisco 49ers, are going to battle for a Super Bowl bid at 6:30 on Fox in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium, man. You know, what about, you know, you think the underdog versus the big dog, but the paths of the quarterback in this game are almost the opposite. Jared Goff, the former number 1 overall pick.
Been
Brock
to a Super
Purdy,
Bowl before.
Yeah, he's been
there.
to the Super Bowl. He's been to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy, the ultimate underdog, the last pick in the NFL draft, Mr. Irrelevant, coming from a lowly program like Iowa State. You know, not to dog on Iowa State too much.
Well, they haven't won a lot,
never
to be
forget
fair.
the 2019 Camping World Bowl.
Or do we have a Cheez-It Bowl champions, or did they lose that one?
Oh, they lost that one too.
Couldn't even get the
Brock
Cheez-Its,
Purdy,
man.
it doesn't have a great history in terms of these bowl matchups, so hopefully if they get to the Super Bowl, he can kind of buck that trend. But, you know, the 49ers have been the team to beat in the NFL almost all year long till the Ravens went out there to San Fran and kind of beat them up.
Badly.
Kyle Hamilton.
They punched him in the mouth a couple
I think when
times.
Brock Purdy goes to sleep at night, he sees Kyle Hamilton in his nightmares. We didn't even mention that. Kyle Hamilton, one of the best safeties in football in year 2, is going to be going up against Travis Kelce.
Picks galore. I mean,
that defense is going to be on fire. I just can't wait. But, you know, first NFC North title since 1993 for the Lions, fighting for their first Super Bowl appearance in franchise history. Dan Campbell has restored the grit and feeling to the Ford Field. You know, it's just...
I mean, they did have to sacrifice the Detroit Pistons, but
Yeah.
if they make a Super Bowl, you gotta say it's worth it because that team is awful. But at least the Lions, they're having a little
They've
fun
got
in the city.
the Lions are back. The Red Wings are playing
right.
well again. Michigan won the national championship in football. That's the only time we'll acknowledge that, other than to laugh about Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan to go to the Chargers.
That's
It's great. It's awesome. You know, I hope they hire Will Muschamp to take over there in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
But, you know,
trusted associate Will Muschamp.
while the Lions, you know, this is their first time here in a while. 4th NFC Championship appearance in the last 5 years for the 49ers, looking to get back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2019, where they fell to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at the star-studded matchups there. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, a questionable Deebo Samuel.
I saw him running around in practice today, right before the show.
Oh, you were there at practice?
Yeah, you know, I just caught the plane back in. But no, I saw a quick video. He looks in good spirits, so, I mean, it looks optimistic. One thing about Ayuk, he's 30th in targets as a wide receiver, 7th in yards. He does so much with so little action thrown his way. And just incredible route runner.
People talk about Brock Purdy and they act like he's some kind of like check down artist who doesn't really do it. He leads the NFL in almost every explosive play stat possible except attempts. He attempts the fewest big plays, but he still generates the most of them of any quarterback in the NFL. That just speaks, I think, to the talent around him, but also his skill as a passer. And so it's going to be...
He's been really good. People want to hate on him so much, but I'm like, look, his team's in the NFC Championship. He has really good numbers. I mean,
at some point, you got to call a spade a spade. And I think Brock Purdy is a very good quarterback in the NFL.
Thought you were going to call him a very good spade, but yeah, he is a good quarterback.
You know, it's. I think the big matchup is going to be the strong and imposing Detroit Lions offensive line versus a San Francisco defensive line that has kind of not. You know, the defense has been great for San Francisco. The defensive line has been the one part of their team that hasn't really performed all that well.
Hasn't met expectations. I feel like they were high expectations, though.
Yeah.
But so I feel like they're still.
Bosa has been great. Chase Young hasn't.
He hasn't been as good as people thought, though.
You know, 9.5 sacks on the season for Bosa. They traded for Chase Young. He hasn't even recorded a sack in his time in the Bay Area. And you know, the interior, Javon Hargrave has been good, the former South Carolina State Bulldog. Shout out the fellas from Orangeburg. But, you know, it's an offensive line of Detroit that might be one of the best in all of football. They're physical, they're big and burly, they can hold up in the pass game, but they can also blow you off the ball in the run game for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And so,
what a duo that is.
If they're gonna need Bosa and Young to wreak havoc, get pressure on Jared Goff, force some mistakes so that their star-studded secondary can make some plays, give Brock Purdy and company short fields when they go up against, you know, Aiden Hutchinson and a Detroit defense that has stepped up when it matters, but their overall stats aren't great. But both of these games are just so exciting. They're very different. I think Kansas City, Baltimore will be more of like a punches thrown, blood spilled, fight in the street type of game. And Detroit and San Francisco, there's going to be a lot more loose, free-flowing offense, big plays. But if you like football, you got to tune into both of these games on Sunday.
Well, I can confirm that the both of us like football, so we will be tuning in. And that's all we've got for you today. We'll be right back after the break with this week's Pick'ems to wrap up this episode of Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome back to BDL Pick'ems. I ended last season with a 40-22 record in college football, while Spencer, drumroll please, got to 500. 31-31, and now we're pivoting a little bit to college basketball. And man, do we have some star-studded matchups coming up, not just this weekend, but throughout next week. Starting out now with a home game for number 4 Houston against Kansas State. Spencer, who do you got?
Give me Houston. They're one of the best teams in the country this year. They average over 10 steals a game. And, JP, we have it in our notes that they held a team to 15% shooting from the field the other day. It doesn't matter what team that is abysmal, and that just says something about the Cougars' defense. JP, who do you have?
You know, I really like this Kansas State team. I think that they're an incredibly underrated bunch by the ratings and the metrics. They have some great wins. You know, they beat Baylor in overtime a couple weeks ago. But Houston, like you said, great defense. They have some timely scoring. It's a tough place to play. I think that they're able to get it done at home. And, you know, Kansas State, that
was one of our favorite teams last year, especially tournament time. Jerome Tang's squad.
Yeah, he can get his team ready to play, so it wouldn't shock me at all. And now staying on Saturday, staying in the Big 12, we have a lot of Big 12 games here on this. We have number 7 Kansas, the Jayhawks, going on the road to take on the Cyclones, and number 23 Iowa State.
I've got the Jayhawks in this one. I know they've had a couple kind of random losses to not-so-good teams like West Virginia and UCF, but they've gotten it done against the big teams this year. I think they continue that trend, go into Ames, and I think they walk out with a win, JP.
I really, you know, this Kansas team is really good. Kevin McCullough Jr. averages 20 points a game, but the Hunter Dickinson transfer from Michigan has been great for them. But Iowa State, man, it is one of the toughest places to play in all of college basketball. I'm a huge fan of this Iowa State team. They just went and beat Kansas State this week. And as we get here, both teams are 4-2 in the Big 12, and the Cyclones are able to get to the line better than any team in college basketball. They went to the line 38 times versus the Wildcats. That's what I had to find. They do struggle as a team shooting sub 70%, but if they can hit their free throws,
or if you get 40 attempts,
if they can hit their free throws because they're going to get them, then it gives them an excellent chance to win. It's a tough place to play. I think the Cyclones win in a pretty big upset in the Big 12, and then I think this is our final Big 12 game. Maybe not. The Oklahoma Sooners reeling a little bit, taking on the red-hot Texas Tech Red Raiders. Spencer, lay it on me.
I've got the Sooners in a bounce-back win here against Texas Tech. They're at home. They should be comfortable. I know they've had kind of a tough couple of weeks. Settle in at home. It's a really good Texas Tech team. You pack the stands. I think the Sooners get it done. What are your thoughts, JP?
Yeah, you know, Oklahoma, they've lost 3 of 5, including 2 blowout losses to Kansas and Texas, including their last time out. They lost by 15 at home to the Longhorns. And it's a Texas Tech team that's coming off of a huge win against BYU. They got a week off to really kind of recover from the physicality of Big 12 play. They're first in the Big 12 at 4-1 in conference play. They have 4 players that average in double figures. And that's for that reason. Give me the Red Raiders. Guns up. I think that they go into Norman, Oklahoma, and get a big win. And, you know, finally, I think we're free of the Big 12. But we're not free from pick'ems. We got some big games, don't we, Spencer?
We sure aren't. We're moving on to the ACC for a quick matchup, as we've already talked about. Duke versus Clemson. JP, who you got in this one?
It's going to come down to the stars. Can P.J. Hall and Joe Girard show up against Jeremy Roach and Kyle Filipowski? And, you know, I think Brad Brownell is able to dig deep and get a great performance on the road from his star players. I think P.J. Hall goes off for, potentially 20 and 10. I think he has a great performance against Filipowski. I think it's a great back-and-forth duel. I think this game goes down to the wire. I think it's a high-scoring shootout type. But I think Joe Girard is able to out-duel Jeremy Roach as the secondary scoring option. And Clemson gets a massive win that bumps them up a couple seed lines in terms of tournament play with a win on the road in Durham.
Yeah, this is my nightmare. These are probably my two least favorite teams ever. Just growing up a UNC fan, now going to the University of South Carolina, I was born into one hatred and I've chosen another. But I'll take
Bane?
Sure. Don't pull out the Bane accent. Not yet. I'm going to take the Blue Devils in this one. I think they're just a more complete team. I love what they do defensively with Tyrese Proctor. I think he's going to make an excellent NBA player one day, and I think they get it done in Durham. Moving on to the Pac-12, our beloved conference, we have Oregon hosting number 9 Arizona. JP.
Arizona started out this year super hot. They were number 2 in the country, one of the best teams out there. They struggled as conference play started. They got 31 dropped on them by I can't even remember his name. It's Julian.
Beaver legend.
Julian Proper for Oregon State, 31 points with a nailed 3 at the buzzer to win it over the Wildcats. So they've really kind of struggled to get it going. Meanwhile, Oregon is first place in the Pac-12 at 5-1, or 6-2 in conference play. And a familiar face is leading the way for them. Former South Carolina Gamecock Jermaine Couisnard.
He might be 27 now. We're not quite sure.
He's got his 401k lined up after he graduates, but he's averaging over 14 points per game and almost 2 steals. It's an Oregon team that's great at defense. It's a tough place to play. Give me the Ducks getting it done and continuing their stretch at number 1.
I think the Wildcats get a big bounce-back win on the road. This is a tough team. Arizona's been a mainstay in college basketball recently, and I think they keep that title, and I think they move up the Pac-12 rankings, knocking off the Ducks. And then we've got the 25th-ranked New Mexico team hosting Nevada on Sunday. Your thoughts, JP?
It's a great Mountain West Conference matchup. This is a conference that's really kind of coming to its own as a mid-major product. You have New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado State, San Diego State. I'm obviously UNLV, of course, the running Rebs.
Wyoming's been in the tournament a
Utah
little bit.
State, Wyoming.
Boise State.
I think
we named about the whole conference.
Yeah,
there.
They used to have BYU and Utah, too. But this is a New Mexico team I'm incredibly fond of. They play a very fun style of basketball. They're 17-5 on the season. They have a great offense. They have 2 ranked wins in the last week over Utah State and San Diego State. They're led by the guard, Jamal Mashburn Jr. That name might mean something special to our older audience. The former Charlotte Hornet legend, his son, really doing great work out west for New Mexico, and it's a very tough place to play. The Pit is one of the roughest places in all of college basketball. Nevada's a great team. They had dropped 3 in a row, but they jumped number 24 Colorado State by 13 points on Wednesday, but I think New Mexico has enough scoring to get it done at home.
Yeah, I think the Lobos get it done as well, especially as you mentioned their home environment. I think it'll be too much. And Mashburn, he's pretty sick, isn't he?
Yeah, efficiency doesn't matter to him. It's all a fraud. But so now we got 2 games.
That's how that works.
And next week on next Tuesday to get into, one of them featuring the South Carolina Gamecocks. And they're going to be going on the road against the 14-4, number 5 ranked Tennessee Volunteers. Spencer, in a game that could almost solidify South Carolina as a SEC contender and potential, 5 or higher seed. Do you think the Gamecocks have what it takes to get another huge win?
I think the Gamecocks will keep it close, and I think that's respectable for this team. Tennessee is a really good team. They've been an elite program as of late. They do tend to falter in tournament time.
That's the Rick Barnes motto.
Exactly. But in the regular season, my advantage goes to the Volunteers this time. However, I think in a couple years' time, I think Lamont Paris is going to have this team ready to win those big games, especially up in Knoxville. It's a tough place to play. I think the Volunteers just barely take this one.
Yeah, Tennessee is one of the best teams in all college basketball. They are 14-4 in the top 5 in the nation for a reason. They are 4th in opponent effective field goal percentage, 5th in opponent 2-point percentage. Opponents shoot sub 30% from 3 against the Volunteers. But defense has always been the motto of Rick Barnes' teams when he was at Texas, when he was at Clemson, and especially now that he's at Tennessee. But it's the ability on offense, I think. Dalton Knecht is one of the best players in college basketball.
He's electric.
The Northern Colorado transfer, scoring almost 19 points a game and shooting 40% from 3 on 5 3-point attempts. And then they have the big man, Jonas Adu, 2 blocks and almost a double-double. So it's just hard to bet against that. I agree. I think South Carolina can keep it close, but man, it's a tough place to play. Tennessee, they've had a week off after their 20-point bludgeoning of Alabama. I think that the Volunteers are able to get it done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And our final pick'em of the day, we move to the Big East. We have Villanova taking on Marquette. JP.
You know, number 14 Marquette struggled a little bit. They lost back-to-back games to Seton Hall and Butler, where Tyler Kolek shot a combined 1 for 26 from the field. Now he's back red hot. The Golden Eagles are back into the top 15. They're playing a great style of basketball, but they're going on the road against a Villanova team that is just, they're desperate. 11-8 on the season. They've struggled in Big East play. They're 4-4 in conference. They lost a heartbreaker to UConn, the number 1 team in the country, at home last weekend. They need a win to solidify themselves as a tournament contender. I think Eric Dixon, he's a big-time player. We've seen it in the past. It's a big-time game. He's going to go out there and make big-time plays. I think he's going to be able to go off for about 25 points. Tyler Kolek will be amazing as well. This is going to be another rough-em-up, beat-em-up game in the Big East. But I think Villanova, they're going to dig in deep. They're going to get a huge win for their tournament hopes against Marquette.
I've been a big Marquette truther the last couple of years. I think Tyler Kolek gets it done. As you mentioned, he's back on track. The team's back on track. I don't think Villanova, they might be able to hang in the game, but I don't think they will. I don't think they'll take down the Golden Eagles. Give me Marquette in this one. And JP, that's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie, the first of season 3. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barrett.
And I'm Spencer Ball. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great weekend, Carolina. Forever to be.